Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Zadox Chess Channel, and welcome to the Opera Euro Rapid Chess Tournament in 2021. We're back now in the match game between Magnus Carlsen and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. If you have followed this day, this was really incredible. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave won 2 games against Magnus Carlsen, and yesterday Magnus Carlsen, of course, won the match game. Now these two guys have to play 2 more additional blitz games in this game's end in a draw. Then they will have to play the so-called Armageddon game. Let's check out now the first blitz game. Here, Magnus played the move knight to f3. He didn't want to play anymore the move d4 going into the Grünfeld, because I think Maxime Vachier-Lagrave improved his Grünfeld in the second day. So Magnus chooses now a different line. We have c4, the English opening, knight to c3. We have now d5 again. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave is trying to go in similar structures like in the Grünfeld. Okay, white hasn't played the move d4, but still it's a similar line in which again we're forcing a trades of pawns in the center. We have c takes d5, knight to d5, and now h4 immediately by Magnus Carlsen. And this is possible because Magnus hasn't exposed himself a little bit with the move d4, so many times this line has been played. And you see now after move knight to d5, black has left the defense of the h5, so that's why this line is possible. We have knight to c3, and now a very interesting choice by Magnus, d takes c3, trading off the queens, queen to d1, king to d1, and now we have f6, we have h5, and here Maxime Vachier-Lagrave passed through with the move g5. If you pass through even further with the move h6, okay, you're blocking maybe your opponent's bishop out, but it's only temporary. I think in long terms this pawn could be a weakness, so that's why it's not such a good choice. You have to keep your pawns connected somehow. And here Magnus plays now the move e4, and in the database I see only one game in this line after move e4. Here it's a gameplay by Labib against Kokol. Kokol played here move e5. So here Maxime Vachier-Lagrave tried the move knight to d7, and I think this move is better than the move e5 because you don't want to play anymore with pawns when you're black. You have already exposed yourself, you have already some weaknesses here on life course in front of the king, so don't touch the pawns anymore. If you get challenged, then touch pawns. Now I don't think it's a good idea. Here knight to d4, we have knight to e5 by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. So you see, if you would have the pawn here, then your knight couldn't be here, so now the knight is centralized. We have bishop to e2 by Magnus, and now bishop to d7, king to c2. So you see Magnus found a good way how to secure the king. The king is not in danger here, the king is perfectly fine, and we have now castling by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. So bishop to e3, Magnus has a good setup. This pawn is so far protected. Maybe we could try f3, g4, and maybe trying to preoccupy here the weak f5 square. This could be also long-term plan for white. Here c5 played by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and we have now reached, I think, already the critical moment of the game. Here Magnus tried knight to f3, and here really I think the best way is to play simply knight to f3, knight takes f3, bishop to f3. This is an equal game. White has to react, and now we have time maybe even to play g4. We can play basics, fixing the pawn structure. We don't have weakness, and I think this line should be probably a draw for both sides. But here Maxime played a huge blunder. He went after the bishop pair, and Magnus simply took bishop to c5. Okay, Maxime has here the move b6, bishop to e3, knight takes e3, f takes e3, and here Maxime probably calculated this particular moment. After move g4, Magnus has now of course the opportunity to play knight to d4, e5. Still everything is pretty much forced, I think, but now after move knight to f5, bishop to f5, e takes f5, and probably here till this moment maybe Maxime Vachier-Lagrave even calculated in this fast time format. What he didn't probably see is this move, rook to e1. Magnus found a great way how to defend this pawn, because he doesn't have to advance the pawn, he doesn't have to play the move e4. If you take of course bishop to a6, discover the attack, and you lose the bishop. So I think this line maybe Maxime really saw till this move knight to f5, and then bishop takes f5, here bishop to h6 and similar stuff. Now it's a much better game here for Magnus. Magnus develops the bishop on the most active square. Now when we cement this bishop around the square e6, I think black is really in troubles here. So rook to d6, we have rook to h3. You see this pawn is also a weakness. Rook to d8, rook to e2. It's really now easy for Magnus to find the best next move. Bishop to g5, here Magnus simply takes another pawn. We have h6, rook to g4. There is a way of course how to include all of your pieces in the game. Bishop to e6, rook to c4 is a possibility here. The evaluation is much better of course for white. So although it's an opposite color bishops game, what what Magnus should not allow in this position is maybe to trade off too many rooks, then maybe going into an endgame where we're one pawn up, but still maybe this could be a draw. So this opposite card bishops games are very, very dangerous. So in some occasions you can maybe have 2 or 3 pawns more than your opponent, but still the game can end in a draw. We have bishop to a6, rook to d5, and now rook to c4. You see, as I said, it's really easy for Magnus now to find the best next active move. Rook to c5, and now e4, fixing the pawns here. As we said, Black's goal is now to trade off more pieces to simplify the position. But the problem, I think, also for Black is that Black cannot find better activities for the bishop. You cannot include the bishop. The bishop is locked by its own pawn, so you have maybe here some kind of an activity, but you cannot improve it. You would love maybe to play bishop to e3 and then cement the bishop here, where the bishop could attack this diagonal, but it's not possible because Maxime, you see, he's trying to find some activities. Bishop to e6, and the cool part about this bishop is, of course, that the bishop is covering also the g8 square, so Maxime cannot include this rook here. We have bishop to g3, and now Magnus goes simply into this pawn majority attack, 3 versus 2. He's trying now to create a pass pawn. b5, bishop to d5, king to b6, king to b3. You have to play actively with your king, of course. Rook to d7, and now a4, a6, now rook to a2. Magnus is trying now to get use of the a file. We have rook to a7, we have a5, king to c7, and now c4, b takes c4, and now after bishop c4, here in this position, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave resigned. So, okay, what to say? Here are also possibilities: bishop to a6 in some occasions, maybe something like here, king to a4, bishop to a6, and then b5, b6 is a possibility. King to d6 probably the best way, but still king to a4 I think wins immediately. Bishop to a4 is really, really wild. As we said, this bishop is in troubles. If this bishop would be somewhere here, then it could participate in the game, and as I said, unfortunately, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave made this one really blunder. He lost the pawn and he locked his bishop. This two moments, I think, were the critical moments of this match game. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Really wild stuff. We'll see now what will happen in the second match game between Magnus Carlsen and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Magnus has now a decisive lead. He needs only one draw from this other blitz game. Let's see now what happened. I don't think that it's over. Maxime has, of course, still his chances in this match game. So, okay, meanwhile, you can watch my other content on my YouTube chess channel. You can also follow my coverage of this tournament so far. Here are the links, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.